2026 Kentucky Derby coverage on the In the Money Media Network begins right now. PTF and JK back with you in the Money Media YouTube channel. We're going to do our first top 10. Once again, Eric DeCoster, the great Eric DeCoster, the one providing the official ITM list. We're going to chime in on this first iteration of it. If you want more, much more, Eric and I are going to have an audio version. We'll go in depth about each of these 10 runners, as well as some also eligibles. Listen to that wherever you get your podcasts. In the Money Players Podcast. Appreciate everybody's support. This video brought to you by our friends at Twin Spires. Great contest action coming up basically daily over there at twinspires.com. Got the synthetic championship contest coming up on Saturday at Turfway. Go to twinspires.com, navigate over to the tournaments tab, learn much more about that. JK, we're going to dive right in with number 10 on this list. This horse ran a very fast figure. I happened to ride back on the Breeders' Cup on the plane next to trainer Chad Summers of Napoleon Solo. I know he's very excited about him. We maybe got our first line on the form this past weekend in the Remsen. Not necessarily positive there, but I don't know how much that matters. Napoleon Solo, very fast horse. Is he a Kentucky Derby contender?
Sure. I suppose he could be. I'd be curious to hear what the idea, what the plan was after the Champagne. I'm not sure if Chad shared that with you and why there's been a little bit of a break, but certainly, I mean, he ran fast enough. If you run, you win the grade 1 Champagne. I don't care who you are. There's a conversation about what you could do in the Kentucky Derby come the first Saturday in May.
I didn't talk to Chad about that specifically. I just got the impression they thought it was a fast race and maybe there was some minor 2-year-old stuff going on and he was going to be ready to rock and they just didn't want to push the envelope. Maybe we'll have him on and ask at some point. Number 9 on the list is Cannoneer. This horse may be a little bit disappointing on debut, but that was all the way back in June. Came back this fall, looked like a different animal, got that 90 buyer speed figure. These connections certainly need no introduction. The pedigree is strong on this one. Where do you stand on Cannoneer at this point? Would he be on your personal top 10?
Yeah, you're still at that time of this Derby trail where you'll have a couple of horses. We'll talk about another one here in a little bit. That kind of have that one-turn big race, big performance, big figure, and you still have that big question mark is will they go on? Will they train on? Will they go longer? Do they want more ground? And like you mentioned, when you look at the pedigree of this horse, an Into Mischief out of a Malibu Moon mare, trained by Brad Cox, you'd like to think this one will check all the boxes. The way that he finished his race, you'd like to think that he would. I think he's very interesting and one that definitely deserves to be on this list.
The first California horse we're going to talk about is not trained by Bob Baffert. He's trained by Vladimir Serin. Mr. AP was a surprise to many in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, though not our friend Michael Adolphson, who on our Final Answer show gave this one a confident shout, finished close up there, second, in fact, to the presumptive 2-year-old champ, who we'll get to in a little bit. What do you expect from Mr. AP? I'll talk about it more when we get to the horse that won that race, but I have a feeling there's maybe a little bit more of a gap in ability than that raw margin suggests. I think he belongs on the list at this point with that big grade 1 second, but I'm just not sure how he's going to progress going forward. Where are you with Mr. AP?
He feels like to me kind of one of those, that was the right time. It was a home game in California. There was a big favorite in there that kind of ran everyone else off their feet. And he was one who just kind of picked up some pieces while some other horses were tired. He's not necessarily one that I'd be cutting in line to make a future wager on. Definitely one to keep an eye on. Definitely deserves to be on this list. But he feels like one of those kind of, 8th graders that was bigger and stronger than everyone else. And now it's junior year coming into the 3-year-old year. Let's see if that 8th grader is still as good as everyone else when they catch up to him.
Number 7 on this list is Blackout Time. This was everybody's wise guy horse. Not everybody. I guess there were some other wise guy horses potentially in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but he had some wise guy credentials heading in off that good second at Keeneland at the grade 1 level. Didn't end up competing there, but is apparently back on track. Kenny McPeak, no stranger to the Derby trail. I'm really interested in seeing what we get next from this horse. The questions around the fact that he didn't end up competing there are enough for me to keep him out of the top 5. But this is another one I'm pretty sure I'd have slotted confidently in my top 10 at this point. What's the upside for Blackout Time?
Yeah, I mean, look, he got an early start. He's got a foundation. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to run in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but you'd like to think that he'll come back a little bit stronger from that. So I think that the foundation you'd like to see is there. The strength of schedule is there, right? Running second to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, champion and 2-year-old champion in Ted Noffey. He's right there in the mix. He's trained by a guy who knows how to win that race. He knows how to win races that weekend. And he went back to back in the Oaks and the Derby a couple years back. So I think Blackout Time is interesting, and obviously the not this time factor as well is one that you don't want to ignore.
Number 6 on the list. I might even have this one higher on my personal list. When I did my write-up of Future Pool number 2, this one was among my short list at the end, as are a couple of these here in the top 5. Eric DeCoster and I apparently seeing things very much the same way, but I was really impressed with Englishman's last race. This is a horse that seems to be headed in the right direction and has a lot of the positive markers, you might say, for a horse that's going to be a grade 1 quality. I suppose you could say there's some questions when you look at the pedigree, but I'm remaining very optimistic about Englishman. Am I being too enthusiastic saying for me he'd be maybe in my top 3 at this stage off that good race at Churchill?
Well, I think that, when you look at the trainers out there that have not won Kentucky Derbies, there's probably a couple of them that you think, it might not. Cherie DeVoe is not one of them. It feels like Cherie's got a Derby with her name on it. And this horse winning the way that he did first time out really feels like one that's going to progress, one that's going to get better. Winning a debut the way that he did, going the 7 furlongs, getting the figure that he got. And I'm not too concerned from a pedigree standpoint. I don't think Maxfield is necessarily exposed enough as a horse that may or may not be one that will train on, will have his horses train on at the longer distances, right? I mean, he was pretty darn good around 2 turns on the dirt. He didn't have a whole lot of opportunities to go too much further, but he was one that feels like the base of his pedigree as well. He's going to be fine producing horses that will get 1.25 miles if they are brilliant, and it seems like Englishman could be in that category.
Without further ado, let's move on to Further Ado. This horse definitely deserves a place in a top 10 list. A gun runner, certainly the sire needs no introduction. Connections, another Brad Cox runner, and this one with the best buyer of 98 and has that stakes form in the Kentucky Jockey Club over at Churchill Downs. I think this one is probably pretty much an undisputed top 10 type at this point. Do you see him as your Kentucky Derby winner?
I mean, look, he's in the conversation. Right? I mean, I think his race 2 back, the figure was pretty impressive. I'm not crazy about the way that it all unfolded in the Kentucky Jockey Club, but he's definitely one that will continue to improve. He's a gun runner. He's trained by Brad Cox. He's ridden by Irad Ortiz. The pedigree is there to suggest that the longer is not, the further is not going to be a problem for him. I'm going to reserve judgment on him until after I see his next race. Because when you have a situation where there's one really good race and then there's an okay race, simple math will allow me to make a decision based on what the next race is. If the next race is really good, that's 2-1. I'll go with that. The next race is just okay. That's 2-1. I'll go with just okay. I got to see what this horse does next because I have a little bit of mixed feelings. He could be the best 3-year-old in the group, and he could be one that deserves to be a little lower on this list.
The jury's still very much out. Speaking of which, number 4 on the list, interested, and I can't wait to talk to Eric DeCoster about this on the audio side, to see Brant this high on this list still. But here's my case why maybe he does belong on this list. Is it possible, JK, and this is something that you've brought up with many horses over the years, that the tactics in the juvenile, that he didn't go fast enough early, that he was a little bit too measured early? Maybe he can still be better going longer. I will say, just before I started to think about it too much, looked like one that maybe wasn't going to be as brilliant as the distances went longer, but perhaps there's a case to be made. Will you bust out the silver wig for Brant?
Look, I think Brant certainly could be the right horse for this Kentucky Derby. He passed the test, I thought, last time, running well enough in the juvenile. The issue with him is he going to get better as they go longer? I don't think anyone will argue his brilliance, right? And the fact that he has some pretty big shoes in terms of talent that he has. The problem is that we just don't know what these longer distances are going to do. And the funny part is like we still could get tricked for a couple more starts. I'm going to reserve my judgment on Brant until the Sandington Derby. So talk to me in April.
Okay, that's fair. I will let you punt that question about Brant. Yeah, I'm probably going to, in wagering, take the cynical view, but I can see why Eric is still optimistic. Number 3, there's lots of reasons for optimism. This was actually the first one I mentioned on my short list in the piece I wrote a couple of years ago. Then Paladin comes back, granted, with a perfect trip. Granted, not the fastest Remsen in the history of the world, but a solid effort. Came back in an 85 Beyer speed figure, and he got the job done, and he just looks like one who's all upside, has that gun runner, tap it, cross, Chad Brown, maybe one would say getting close to win his Kentucky Derby. What do you think of Paladin? Am I wrong to be so enthusiastic about him?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that if you want to compare, and the direct comparison would be the same connections, the same everything, really would be Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone ran a 91 Beyer, if I'm not mistaken, in the Remsen,
Sounds
an
right.
85 for Paladin, so a little bit slower. But Sierra Leone also was pretty darn good. Paladin also doesn't seem to have the issues that Sierra Leone had early in his career, where he liked to go left when they were supposed to go straight. So I think that goes a long way too. Paladin also a little bit more tactical than Sierra Leone,
Yeah,
can be a
for
little
sure.
bit more connected. I think that's going to go a long way. Chad seems pretty high on this horse. I think that he'll continue to progress. We'll see which way he goes. I'd imagine they'll work backwards from the bluegrass, just like they did with Sierra Leone.
Number 2 on this list, trained by Riley Mott, Incredibolt, son of Bolt Doro, by Awesome Again, by Awesome Again. So the pedigree certainly seems like it's there. This is a really interesting one because depending on what pace figures you look at, JK, you could say this horse overcame a lack of a setup, or you could say he had a setup. I'm interested in this horse. I wouldn't have him quite this high. Can't wait to hear to Eric why he's this high up on the list. But it has a progressive profile, has graded stakes form, and has some finish. Where are you with Incredibolt?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel the same way. And you said it first. I don't necessarily have a problem with this horse as an individual. I was a little bit shocked and confused that Eric had him so high. We appreciate Eric making this list, so we don't have to do it. And so I'm certainly not knocking him for it. I'm just curious as to why he's so high. He seems a little bit slower than some of the rest, but there's always the opportunity that he could progress on and keep going in the right direction. I would imagine he'll do a lot of his wintering at Oaklawn Park. I feel like Riley Mott spends a lot of time there. We'll see if that's the case. He's gonna have a lot of opportunities with that Smarty Jones, Southwest, Rebel. A lot of opportunity to make some big money too in those big money races.
Number 1 on the list, no one would be disputing this one. This will be your 2-year-old champion. It's Ted Noffey. And here's my positive on Ted Noffey. I know the margin wasn't maybe that great in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and sharp people, including our own Nick Tamaro, have at least sent tweets suggesting that maybe they're not overwhelmed with him as a prospect going forward. But I thought just visually it seemed like a clear case of him idling on the lead. And my personal hypothesis, JK, is that he is better than that field, than that bare margin indicates. Based on the overall resume, I mean, he's live to go ahead and do that very tough feat of being a 2-year-old champion who goes on to win the Kentucky Derby. What do you think of Ted Noffey at this stage?
You know, the one thing I'll say about him that I like is I like his turn of foot. You know, he a lot of dirt horses are very grindy types. You know, it's all about kind of that raw, pure, elongated speed, right? I feel like on a couple of occasions I've just really seen him quicken away from there, and I think that gives Todd some options as Ted Noffey moves on through his career. We'll see if he grows up. I mean, we've seen it 100 times. That bigger, stronger 8-year-old or eighth grader who's shaving in 8th grade, everyone catches up by the time they get to high school, and it's more of an even playing field. We've also seen those 2-year-olds like Fierceness that continue to get better, continue to improve. And while the Kentucky Derby wasn't his day, he did turn out to be a pretty darn good horse. We'll see. Ted Noffey does not have any alarms ringing that he won't be the type of horse that we'll train on, but I guess we'll find out pretty soon.
If I offered you 10-1 on him for the Kentucky Derby right now, buy, sell, or hold?
No, sell. I mean, I'm probably getting 5-1 on the day, 4-1 on the day, or pretty darn close to 10-1 with exactas using him on top. I don't need the 10-1 at this point, just because so many things can happen between now and then.
We want to hear who you like for your Derby top 10 list. Make sure you put that in our YouTube comments. Let us know who your number one would be. That's the easiest thing. Should it be Ted Noffey? Is it a slam dunk? Or who do you have that you might want to put forward as a potential Kentucky Derby hope at this point? We're going to have these videos for you all throughout the Triple Crown season. Make sure you subscribe to the In the Money Media YouTube channel so you get all our YouTube exclusive content. For JK, I'm PTF. Make sure you subscribe to the In the Money Media YouTube channel.